Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Outdoor Adventure Series, the podcast where we celebrate individuals and families, businesses, and organizations that seek out and promote the exploration, stewardship, conservation, access, and enjoyment of the outdoors. Amy Grisak is a returning guest on the Outdoor Adventure Series. We are both members of the Outdoor Writers Association of America, and we've even recorded a couple of episodes together back in 2021 and 2023. Now I'm going to provide links to those episodes in our show notes. But today, it's a little bit of a celebration with Amy. Besides being an outdoor enthusiast, a freelance writer, photographer, she's also, if you had listened to our previous podcast, an accomplished author. But today we're going to chat about her latest book, 100 Things to Do in Bozeman Before You Die. Amy, welcome. So good to see you again.
Well, thank you. I feel like I'm a returning Saturday Night Live host.
This is probably it. I mean, I can probably go back to who's been on my show the most, and I think you are probably tied for the top. So I just got to keep writing more books, and we'll be good.
Excellent.
Excellent. Well, congratulations on the new book, 100 Things to Do in Bozeman Before You Die. And for our listeners, we're recording the video here, but there's my copy of the book. So I was thumbing through it yesterday as I was preparing. And thank you to your publisher, Reedy Press, for sending me the copy and all the information about Amy. I think I already know Amy, but it was very helpful.
Oh, great.
Yeah. So first off, you live in Montana,
Correct.
right? Where in
Yes.
Montana do you live?
I'm in Great Falls, which is central Montana, about 3 hours from Bozeman.
Okay. And I realize Bozeman is one of the major cities in Montana. It's not the capital of Montana. Helena is the capital, correct?
Okay. Yes.
Hey, I got my geography.
Got it.
My elementary school geography teacher, may they rest in peace, will say, Howard, way to go.
Okay.
How familiar were you with Bozeman before taking on this project of writing this book?
Well, I thought I was very familiar because, well, of course, in Montana, 3 hours is nothing. I mean, that's just what you do for a day trip type thing, 3 hours one way. And my husband went to graduate school at Montana State University. And so we're down there. And so when Reedy asked if I would do Bozeman, I'm like, absolutely. But the cool thing is even though you think you know a place, once you look at it with this sort of vision, this perspective, that you're
Mhm.
picking out those great places, I discovered a whole nother layer of Bozeman that I didn't know existed. And it was so much fun.
Okay. Now, when Reedy Press came to you, and you are not the first author that I have interviewed on this podcast who has produced one of the 100 things to do in blank before
Mhm.
you die. How did this introduction with Reedy come about? I mean, again, you've got a lot of experience as an author, a writer, a photographer. You're well known in the outdoor community. They came to you, or did you seek out them? How did that come about?
No, they came to me. It was kind of an email out of the blue that said, "Hey, we like your writing. Would you consider writing this Bozeman book for us?" And like, yes, absolutely. So tickled to death. And then once I learned more about Reedy, I was just so impressed with what they were doing. And they've just been phenomenal since day one to work with.
Okay. Now, when that email came and you said, "Yep, count me in, I'm going to do this," how much time and effort went into producing this book? Because for our listeners, if you've never checked out a 100 Things to Do book, there's a lot of sections here, everything from shopping and fashion, sports and recreation. There's the culture and history, entertainment, food, one of my favorite topics. And
Yep.
of course, Bozeman, I mean, your background, my background, it's an outdoor enthusiast uh, heaven
Is
for 4 seasons worth of sports, okay, and outdoor experiences. How did you go about planning what this book was going to look like?
Well, I already knew a lot of who I wanted to include and what I wanted to include. One of the, I don't want to say wild card, but one of the factors I really had to research, which just broke my heart, was the food.
Mhm.
'Cause because there's always new restaurants, and I
Sure.
always have my old favorites, and they never disappoint, of course,
Right.
but it was a lot of fun just, "Oh, I have to go to Aurora's French Pastry and see what they have this morning," and oh, yes, it was fabulous. That probably required the most research because just like I said, I had my favorites, but I had to go beyond my favorites and check out all these other places that people love.
Okay. Now, just a little side question. Were you on your own or did you take your husband, your boys with you?
No, it was either me and Zeke, my dog. I'd bring
Yeah.
him, and then I have friends down there, of course, in Bozeman, and my friend Pandora and I would hang out a lot. When she got
Okay.
off of work, we'd grab her and we'd go do the M or do some other hikes or climbing and everything, and of course have to eat. So yeah, so I grabbed Panda and we had fun.
Okay. And the time it took to assemble all the interviews, is this a, a 1 month project, 6 month project, year project?
It was a year. It was a
Okay.
year-long project because you
Okay.
want to hit all those seasons. At first, when they came to me and I was so excited about it, I'm like, "Well, I can have this done in 6 months." Yeah, no problem. And even my editor, she's like, "Well, maybe you wanna think about it and all the seasons." I'm like, "No, you're right." And I'm glad she did that because even within that year, new things came up. Other places, for example, the Children's Museum in Bozeman, which has been there for 30 years, I think, that closed.
Oh, wow.
You
Okay.
so it's just so that and there's gonna be flux even after it being in print, but I really
Mhm.
appreciated that insight, that wisdom of hers to say, "No, why don't you take a year?"
Okay.
So that
And
was
you
good.
and you just answered the question for me as I was curious of what type of interaction did you have with your publisher at Reedy? So, I mean, because again, they've done these books before. They know what's going to work, what's not going to work. And so, was the guidance just like a little nudge, or we think you really ought to do it this way, or go find these kinds of venues to write about?
Well, they have that structure with the 5 chapters, and
Right.
within those, it pretty much fit what they wanted. One thing that I had to change a little bit, some of the activities was like only a year event or a single event that occurs every year.
Sure.
And there's a lot of those. And
Yeah.
I ended up having to pull out some of those and add some more reoccurring type things just because, and it was a good point that you wanted to have available to anybody, not just, oh, I missed that weekend
Right.
so I missed that event. I mean, there are a few in there just because there's some really cool single event type things, like the Sweet Pea Festival. But other than that, it's tried to do reoccurring so no matter when people were there, they could find just fabulous things to do.
Well, that makes sense. Maybe there's a chapter at the end. Here's the annual events if you are going to make your trip. So yeah, note to Reedy, you should think about doing that. What's the big deal about Bozeman?
Wow, Bozeman has exploded lately. It always, I mean, I shouldn't say it always. It was kind of known as this little cow town, little university town, especially like I said, when my husband was going to grad school there
Mhm.
and just kind of feel even keel type. And I would say 25 years ago or so, it really started rolling and becoming more popular. And then in the last 5, 6, 7 years, between the whole pandemic situation and honestly between the Yellowstone series,
Mhm.
even though it didn't take place in Bozeman, that seemed to be the central focus, and so people just flocked out here,
Mhm.
and yeah, it's really made an impact, and high-rise apartments going up, and just tons and tons of people, and
Yeah.
but with it just things that Montana has not experienced before in the terms of shopping availability and the level of food in Bozeman is off the
Mhm.
chart, I have to say.
Okay. Do you have a sense of folks that are coming to Bozeman either for a holiday, a vacation. Now I know you're going to go to Big Sky, a very
Yep.
famous hill for skiing, snowboarding, and the like. Outside of that experience, where what are folks coming into the Bozeman area to do beyond just that skiing experience?
Well, just within the town of Bozeman, what's really shocking to me, and I guess I've noticed it over the years, but really thinking about this book is how close wilderness is or wild places are to
Hmm.
Bozeman. I would say within 10 to 15 minutes from downtown Bozeman, you're on the trails up into the Forest Service land, up into public land.
Hmm.
And that's really remarkable. I mean, it is a stunningly gorgeous valley
Hmm.
that's surrounded by multiple mountain ranges, the Bridgers and the Spanish Peaks. And it is just absolutely incredible that you can go from a fabulous dinner or lunch out to hiking 20 plus miles in the wilderness, basically, or near what wilderness. So that is a huge draw to people. Of course, the rivers, we have floating, fly fishing is extraordinarily hugely popular in Bozeman with the Gallatin, Madison, all the different tributaries of those.
Hmm.
Definitely, it's a busy place, and so you have to kind of be creative to find your own space. If you're going on the weekend in the middle of the day, you're gonna be sharing these areas with a lot of people, but, with all my friends who live down there, if you get off the beaten path a little bit, you
Hmm.
definitely lose the crowds. Early in the morning, later once again, you lose the crowds in those off hours and push a few more miles under your boots and you lose them too.
I love that. So you can explore close to home or just get out there a little bit and, like you say, get off the beaten path. Is the influx of opportunities for experiences, whatever they might be in Bozeman, is that still the vacationer, or is also you mentioned the high rises? So my sense is people are still flooding into Bozeman as maybe second homes, or maybe just first homes, or like I want to move from some other place, and I'm thinking maybe they want to leave California because
Mm.
they want to leave that lifestyle and go. They have this again. They've watched an episode of Yellowstone. Okay, great, Bozeman. There we go.
Yep.
Do you get a sense that people are? Is it a combination of just full time residents, or people just coming in having second homes or on vacations?
Boy, I think both, almost an even split of both. There's definitely the wealthier contingent who's building or buying that second home just so they can come during those nicest parts of the year
Hmm.
when it's not 30 below like it was this week type thing. So, but a whole lot of people are moving in, younger people who just want to get their foot in the door,
Hmm.
find work. It's definitely challenging to find work that will pay for
Right.
the rental for the price to live there, but I'm on lots of websites and Facebook pages and everything about Bozeman, and it's constant stream that I'm looking for an apartment, I'm looking for a job, or I'm moving there next month. What do you recommend? Type thing. So
Okay.
it's half and half.
Okay. So if Howard Fox, the podcaster, and coach was looking for his next place to live, which is a common theme in some of my interviews, especially with destination marketing organizations, because uh, I have the ability to be a digital nomad because almost everything I do is like we're doing right now,
Mhm.
online, having a conversation. So it sounds like that's definitely a possibility, in Bozeman. I don't know if I could afford a $3,000 studio apartment, 400 square feet.
Yeah.
However, there's
Um,
I guess I can look.
yeah, that's right. I don't know if it's quite that bad yet, but maybe
Okay.
some of those places look pretty darn nice.
I
So
can imagine. So, in and around Bozeman, what are some of the recreational, opportunities? And you kind of alluded to a bunch of those, but are there some that you caught and you put in the book that are really you feel the reader should know about, ought to know about?
well, definitely probably the most popular area is Highlight Canyon,
Mhm.
which, just out of Bozeman. I mean, it does not take long to get up there on nice roads, and there's a reservoir up there, and there's waterfalls, and And even during the winter, they try to keep the road plowed to be
Hmm.
able to go out because then you can snowshoe back to waterfalls and cross country ski. And I mean, it's a really, really popular recreational area. So keep in mind, definitely with the population or with the people. But once again, if you get out there early, put your kayak on the water at sunrise or shortly after, a lot of days you're going to have that place to yourself, at least for a while. That's
Hmm.
good. Hiking the M, of course, for Montana State University. So close. I mean, it's visible right there in town. You just pop out. And the cool thing is, it could be an hour long hike, or you can go back with other trails and make it multiple hours. Or
Hmm.
across the road from there is Drinking Horse. And it doesn't take long to get some elevation to where you're getting just stunning views of everything. But all through the area, Sacagawea Peak, which isn't far, is I think you can get up it's about 4 miles or so round trip, and it's not I mean, to gain a peak, to climb that high, it's not that bad of a climb
Hmm.
type thing. And then even on the way to Big Sky, Lava Lake is another one that's a nice little side hike that you can access even in the winter and snowshoe back there in the winter. So
Hmm.
it's almost unending. It's great. I mean, I can understand why people love Bozeman.
Okay. Do you have a favorite activity? And before you answer that, because again, you've been in Montana for many years. You're quite familiar with the trek to Bozeman. Is there a favorite outdoor activity or two that year after year just kind of makes your heart sing?
Oh, for me, I'm a hiking nut. So
Okay.
that's I'm always looking for hikes. And I don't want to say necessarily new hikes because what I found over the years is every time you hike a path, even if it's the 20th time, it's brand new.
Hmm.
It's a different day, different season, different flowers, wildlife, that whole thing. So for
Hmm.
me, hiking is the obsession. But down in that area too, it's so cool because like the Madison River is at least in there is so nice and calm that you could just float. Most of the rivers I'm on, you're like clinging to things and fearing for your life. But
Hmm.
these are just you rent tubes and you could just float and you can bring a floating cooler and have so much fun. And then, I mean, down at Bozeman too, there's a couple places like Sunrise Pack String that have horseback rides that are like right in town or close to town
Right.
and just great, great areas and really good people.
Okay. Now, if you are coming to Bozeman, say on vacation,
Mhm.
or or maybe let's just say new family's coming in, they've got kids. What would be some suggestions for you to get them acclimated, not just to the outdoor activities, but also to the offerings within the city limits, the downtown areas, the neighborhoods of Bozeman? How would you suggest they spend some of their time to with their kids? I mean, your boys are getting older; they probably want less time to do with mom and more time
Yeah.
to do with their friends. But 8, 12, 14-year-old kids. I'm assuming the 14 still wanna be with the parent,
Yeah.
but who knows? Uh, but what would you suggest for them? What would be like a sample itinerary for them?
I think one of the first things to do is take them to the Gallatin History Museum.
Mhm,
Just little museum there, lots of fun. You can lock them in one of the jail cells, depending on how they're acting. No, it's part of the old jail. There's an old cabin in there. The docents usually have really good stories, and there's a little tunnel underneath that goes to the city hall and everything where
mhm.
they used to take prisoners.
Oh, wow.
So, no way could they escape if they took them to the court via the tunnel. So, sometimes you can get the docent to show you that. That would be a good start. Another because I am a history buff, and to learn about the history would be taking a carriage ride with
Mhm,
Sunrise Pack String, because then you have the horses and the carriage and the beautiful streets, and they'll talk about the different homes in the
mhm,
downtown and how Bozeman was built. And along those lines, 2 totally fun ladies at the Extreme History Project.
mhm.
So their office is in an old brothel, which is crazy. And which is interesting because the brothel was partially owned by Story Nelson, who was one of the founders, one that not exactly a founder, but pioneering entrepreneurs of Bozeman. But
Mhm.
it was just something kind of in his portfolio type thing.
Mhm.
So they do great tours of like the cemetery and the Chinese district that was there, the historic district, which is where they are located,
Mhm.
and just great kind of peeking behind the curtain, so to speak, on
Mhm.
what Bozeman was and how it became what it is today. So on the history front, definitely that's how I would go. Also would pick up a map at like REI has them, I know, and the different booksellers of the Gallatin Valley Land Trust.
Mhm.
So, they have different they have so many different parks and lakes and trails, and you could bicycle all the over the place. So that would be a really great way for the whole family to explore Bozeman and see what's going on.
Okay. When you look back at the history of Bozeman, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, and I'm sure it's in the book. I know it's definitely available on the internet. When was Bozeman established? That's question one. But then part two is, who are some of the historical figures of significance? And you just mentioned one story
Mhm.
uh, about the brothel, but who are some of those notable figures that really have made Bozeman what it is today?
Trying to think when it was started. I think back in the mid 1800s. I can't think of the specific date,
Hmm.
but a lot of Montana actually was settled post the Civil War.
Okay.
Oh, especially a lot of Confederate soldiers moved out here, kind of
Hmm.
getting away from all of that. And so mid 1800s, and a lot of them came out. Mining was a huge draw. So Virginia City, Nevada City, which is not far from Bozeman, was
Right.
a huge draw for a lot of people. Bozeman, located in the Gallatin Valley, is beautiful, fertile ground. I mean,
Hmm.
great for agriculture type stuff. And so a lot of people came out to kind of what they call mine the miners.
Hmm.
So they provided the materials the miners needed. And that
Okay.
was a big start to Bozeman. John Bozeman was one of the founders. I'm trying to think of the others. He was only out for 3 years, though, which was
Okay.
interesting. The town was named after him. He was traveling in eastern Montana and was killed.
Mm.
And originally, and on his tombstone, because I found that in the cemetery, because I like to walk these things,
I love
but
cemeteries.
yeah, they're cool. And it said on his tombstone that he was killed by Blackfeet natives, but the reality seems to be it was one of his business partners who had him
Mm.
killed.
Uh,
But he was still the town was named after him, and then Story Nelson came in. I mean, this guy was a go-getter, and the flour mill that he started is still standing in
mhm.
disrepair, and I really, really hope something happens to preserve it. But, he did so much in the whole area too. Another name that people will be familiar with when they go to Bozeman is Wilson. It's Willson, and he was a prominent architect. So there's the Wilson School, he developed that. The what is now the Kimpton Armory Hotel
Mhm.
was the for the National Guard. It was the armory for the National Guard, and it's a beautiful kind of art deco building. I think it was built in 1921,
Mhm.
and they built up from that. It is now the tallest building in Bozeman, which
Okay.
is impressive. Great views from it's called Sky Shed. It's a wonderful restaurant on the roof, and
Okay.
they open it all up in the summertime, and then during the winter, they have almost like a greenhouse up there, and it feels like you're in a snow globe when you're up there, and all the sparkly lights and all the snow, and it's yeah, it's a beautiful place, but that was on Wilson's Armory for the National Guard. So, yeah, there's a lot of interesting characters in Bozeman.
Okay. Fair enough. As you are writing the book and you're spending time, what's is there some product or clothing that if you go to Bozeman, besides the refrigerator magnet, you got to bring this back home with you? What are some of those places that our families or visitors going to take back home as their souvenir?
Oh, that's a good question. Trying to think. I know a lot of families, outdoor gear is a
Mhm.
big thing, and Schnee's boots, which they used to just do boots, but they've expanded into a whole outdoor line. They're great.
Yeah.
Kids would love that too. They have a whole back. It's for the firearms, but there's animal mounts in this whole massive room too. So, like,
Okay.
if you want to see a grizzly and things like that, they could go back there.
Okay. Very
Yeah.
good. So you mentioned with the changes that have taken place in Bozeman and most recently the last 6 to 8 years, food. What's if I'm going to come to Bozeman and indulge? Let's start off with breakfast. And you're with your friend, and some other friends are coming in. Okay, we're going to spend the day. Where are you going to? What are some of the breakfast joints you're going to take me to?
Well, my favorite that I found this year was that French bakery, Aurore's French Bakery,
Hmm.
and they're from Paris and absolutely phenomenal. Bring over their own flour, coffee, butter, and it's just a little space, and they're only open, I think, 4 days a week. And you better get there early because
Okay.
there's going to be a line after. But Pandora and I would try to hit that a few times, and I kept thinking, I gotta check out other places, but the pain de chocolat and the sandwiches and end up bringing home sourdough, and it was like I said in the book, I said, "If everybody ate there, we would have world peace."
I
I mean, you can't
Yes.
help but be happy
Right.
there. Yeah.
Okay. Now
It's just
you said coffee. There's a good coffee there, huh?
yeah, they bring it's what is it called? Is it Kona? I forget, but it's roasted in Paris.
Oh wow.
Spring as well. So,
Right.
yeah. So I love
Okay.
our Montana flower and all that, but, oof, that was very good. And along those lines too, another one called Wild Crumb,
Okay.
baked goods. I mean, I walked in there and it's, like, overwhelming, but in a like I said in the book, it's overwhelming in a good way because there's just so much. It's like, what do you choose? So these places, you go back day after day,
Okay. Well, that
and
coffee
then you
sounds
have to have
fascinating. So if I give you my address, little care package.
yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely.
I had a friend that was he was in sports marketing, and he works with world class sports like the Olympics, the World Cup, and he was in Rwanda working with the Rwanda Olympic team. And I roast my own coffee, and I said, "Hey, Heidi, if a bag or 2 of Rwandan coffee accidentally fall into your bag, that would not be a bad thing."
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's so cool.
So, let's say, you did a little morning hike, a bike ride, walking around town. Now you're hungry. Where are you gonna take them for lunch?
Probably one of the food trucks.
Hmm,
They have the food truck scene in Bozeman is off the charts. So much, I mean, Lebanese and just so many Thai different options, which is really, really nice. Actually, that's really, really nice in the evenings too
yeah,
during the
okay,
summer because a lot of times, like Panda and I were hiking, and then you don't get home. The sun doesn't set until 10ish.
right,
So you're by the time you get home, a lot of the restaurants have already closed. So the food trucks, but they'll be open till 10, 11 o'clock at night, even during the weekdays a lot of times. So it's great. I had a Lebanese shawarma there that was just to die for. That was great. But other places like this Roost fried chicken,
mm,
which it was so good. And then the Feed Cafe, those are next to each other close, and they're all part of an old farm, a
mhm,
historic farm. I think Roost was the chicken coop
okay,
originally. It's a large building, but a lot of chickens
okay,
on
very nice, and, a nice dinner. Let's go high end on dinner.
well,
Where
black blackbird's a good one. I mean,
Okay,
that's just it started with a fire oven pizza way,
right,
way back when. Gosh, they've been around over 20 years now. But they just and what's so nice, it's so local. And so
mhm,
many of the restaurants here in town, they focus on local because that's what people love. We wanna taste Montana. And
right,
boy, we got a lot of great stuff here. So Blackbird's
mhm,
really good about that. Plonk is also another really good one about that. and their wines and everything are pretty exceptional. So
Nice.
I think it's impossible to get a bad meal in Bozeman. I
Well, that's
really,
good. I love it.
yeah.
Is there a particular, food dish that is it's indicative of Bozeman?
I don't think so because
Okay,
Bozeman is kind of this melting pot
okay.
of cuisines from throughout the country and actually throughout the world. We have Whistle Pig Korean, and she's using a lot of local foods, but give it definitely
Mhm.
Korean twist on them or traditional Korean in so many instances. But so yeah, it's taking those local ingredients and actually putting this global flair on them, which is
Okay,
pretty remarkable. And of course,
okay.
though, along those lines, though, Montana in general, the huckleberry is king. And so there's definitely different baked goods. I mean, even savory things like sauces on beef and everything will be a huckleberry glaze, beers, soft drinks, all that. Huckleberry is king, all of
Okay.
Montana.
Alright, I love that, and I'm reminded of, the movie Tombstone and Doc Holliday, and "I'll be your huckleberry," but,
That's right.
I had never known what that meant, and it's like, "Oh, okay, I get that. Cool." But,
Yeah.
of a friend of ours, David McIlvaney, who's also a OWAA,
Yeah.
in I think his LinkedIn headline is author, enthusiast, outdoor enthusiast, Huckleberry, or somewhere he's got it in one of
Oh,
his
that's
social sites.
cool.
I thought that was cool. So I'm curious, the food scene, and you talked about the restaurateurs and the food trucks using foods and ingredients grown in Montana and in the Bozeman area. I'm curious, are there farmers markets?
Oh, yes. It has phenomenal farmers markets.
Okay,
They have multiple ones and in Big Sky as well.
okay,
Big Sky's not that far from Bozeman. So, kinda go through the Gallatin Canyon, which can be a little sketchy at times, but yeah,
okay.
big stuff. But yeah, the farmers markets, I mean, you could just eat your way through the market throughout the summer. No
I have so got to get there.
big.
So my sense, Amy, is Bozeman is a four-season kind of town.
Mhm. It is, and
Okay.
it's hard to pick a favorite.
Mhm,
So, and it just kinda depends on what you love to do. Of course, we're in the middle of winter now. They have phenomenal golf courses, different recreation areas, or you can go cross country skiing and snowshoeing right in town.
mm,
So, done with work, you just go out for a few miles, and that's great. Of course, beyond the borders there and the public lands outside of the city, tons of opportunities there. You have Big Sky, which
mhm,
they have the wonderful tram. So there's so much going on there.
okay. Very
And
cool.
Bridger, yeah, Bridger Bowl, all that. So, yeah, so winter is great, and then in the spring, everything comes to life. You got hiking opportunities that open up as the snow recedes, which
Mhm,
is terrific, and then the summer, of course, you have all the river activities and hiking, and then the fall too. We've had absolutely stunningly gorgeous falls lately, autumns, and it really extends those recreational opportunities well into the fall. And
very
really cool
nice.
corn mazes too that you can do in
I
the
love
fall,
it.
which is fun.
I love it. I love it. So, as you are a, Montanan, it's in your blood, and now you've written this book, 100, Things to Do in Bozeman Before You Die. What's been your aha moment as you have embarked on this adventure for your new book?
Well, I think we were talking earlier, and the big thing that resonated with me is when I was down there and talking to people, Bozeman residents who've been there for years, way, way longer, uh, how much they kind of miss some of these things that I was saying, oh, I go here, or this activity, or this event is coming up, and they didn't know about it. And so I was bringing new information to them, even though they had been there, lived there for years. So that
Okay.
kind of opened my eyes a little bit. And I mean, I guess I understood it from my own perspective too, from you just go down for certain things, one on when you're just a civilian, so to speak. But it really opened my eyes that there's so much more and we just have to be aware.
Okay. And in building on this awareness and this aha, what advice would you give to the reader they picked up a copy of the book, they've heard this podcast, they're going to check it out. I know actually, folks, I have to send this link to the podcast to because they're in Bozeman all the time and say, well, look what I just did. And what what would be your insight to go for the reader or a family or somebody just wants to experience the West? And what would you share with them?
Well, not to take some of the out of the way places for granted.
Mhm,
So many times, those of us living in this area, we, it, our world opens up when we take friends and family somewhere because
mhm,
we see a different perspective. And I think that's the same for somebody visiting is to get off that beaten path. Don't do necessarily all the same things that everybody else does, but
mhm.
to just see these new areas of the city or of the region and just kind of explore a little bit.
Very good. Well, I appreciate that insight and thank you for sharing that and your aha moment. Amy, if our listeners would like to learn more about you and your work, where are the best places for them to go?
Can definitely check out my website, which is amygrisak.com, and it's amygrisak.com. And of course, I'm on Facebook and Instagram and all those fun places.
Fantastic. And I know you're also on Substack. And for our listeners, we're going to provide all those backlinks in our show notes. Amy, as always, it is a pleasure to catch up with you and chat. And I'm sure we could have gone on and on, page by page in the book. And I know now I need to make a trek up to Bozeman, and I will let you know. But thank you for spending time with us today.
Well, thank you so much. It's always so much fun to catch up. And one of these years, you got to get up here. You got an
No.
instant tour guide.
I love it. I love it. I will. Well, I'm a very opportunistic podcaster and individual. If I have friends who live in cool places, I want to go visit. So thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
Well, thank you, Howard.
All right. Stay in the line. We're going to do a quick close and you and I can have a final chat. All right, folks, we've just been chatting with Amy Grisak. She is an outdoor enthusiast, freelance writer, photographer, and author of 100 Things to Do in Bozeman Before You Die. This is just a wonderful series of books. I think this is probably the third or fourth author within this series that I have interviewed on the podcast. And I know Detroit was one of them. I had a guest on from one of the I think it was Knoxville. The I can't remember her exact role and the name. I can't remember that off the bat, but she wrote her book, 100 Things to Do in Knoxville Before You Die. So it's just a really cool series. And it's always a pleasure to not only have great guests on the show, but also folks like Amy, who we're both members of the Outdoor Writers Association of America. So it's a pleasure to support her as well. And now I know I need to make plans to go up to Bozeman because as everybody knows, I'm always looking for my next place to live. So we'll have to check that out. Now, you're going to be able to check on Amy and her work. We're going to provide links back to her website at amygrisak.com, as well as her social sites. And we'll also give you a link to her Substack page as well. As for us, you can find this episode on the Outdoor Adventure Series website. You can find us on LinkedIn and Facebook on our Outdoor Adventure Series pages. And the video of this episode will be up on our YouTube page. And of course, you can listen to the audio of this episode wherever you listen to your podcasts from. Just do a search for Outdoor Adventure Series. Okay, folks, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, go out there, have a phenomenal day. And we look forward to having you join us on a future episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast.